Willow class. Hope you're all okay. Welcome to our next English lesson on Tadeo Jones. So lesson 3 today, we're going to be using personification for description. What's personification? Don't worry, by the end of this lesson, you will be an expert. So we've been looking at Tadeo Jones. We are building up to and working towards writing a really amazing description of the Egyptian tomb. So we've already looked at expanded noun phrases and we've looked at similes and metaphors. And today we're going to learn personification, which is another way that you can make amazing descriptive writing. So personification is when you give human qualities to an object or an animal. And quite often you might hear phrases that grown-ups say that are actually using personification. So here's a picture of a lovely cherry pie. That looks tasty, doesn't it? And the phrase, the personification, is the pie was calling her name. Now, if somebody said, oh, it was calling my name, I just had to eat it. What they would mean is, like, it was talking to me, I just had to eat it. But actually, the pie can't really talk, can it? So it's giving a human quality to an object or an animal that couldn't ever possibly have that human quality. But by using that personification to describe the pie, for example, it makes you really think that it was delicious. And not only did it look delicious, it smelt delicious. It was irresistible because it was calling her name. Okay, so here's another example. Lightning danced across the sky. It's a lovely picture to illustrate what that might look like. Lightning can't actually dance, can it? No, but the way it moves could be described as dancing to create the impression that the lightning is moving really, really quickly. So if I said lightning danced across the sky, you would probably think it was a quick flash that spread quite far or had quite particular moves and rhythm to it. It gives you an idea, a picture in your mind of how that thing behaved, what it looked like, which really helps you when you're a reader to paint a picture in your mind. So here we've got some personification examples, but they're split in half, so we've got to match them up. So we've got the gentle waves, the twisting vines, the sun's fierce beams, the fire alarm, and the moon. Those are our nouns, okay? Those are our objects, our things. And here we've got to give them a human-like quality, something that humans would do, that people would do. And we're going to match them up to find ones that make sense to add a bit more detail to that description. So we've got hit our vulnerable skin, screamed a warning to us, stroked the shoreline, peeked over the clouds, and suffocated the crumbling house. Now, what I want you to do now is pause the video and look really closely and see if you can match up which ones you think should go together. And then we'll have a look at it together in a minute, okay? Pause. Right, did you pause the video? Have you had a think? Hope so. Right, let's have a go together. So the gentle waves. Now, if you think about in personification, you have to have a verb. You have to have a verb for something that that object did. Okay, so let's think about what waves might do. They're gentle, they're not fierce and rocky. So that adjective gentle really gives us a clue as to what kind of verb you might do. So you're looking for a verb that matches that adjective, a verb that is gentle. So let's look at our options. We've got some verbs here. We've got hit, scream, stroke, peak, or suffocated. Which one of those do you think goes with gentle waves? Okay, I'm hoping you came up with stroked the shoreline. The gentle waves stroked the shoreline. That's what I was thinking of. Gentle and strokes, they match, they go together. So that makes more sense. But it gives you a really nice idea, a nice picture in your mind of how the waves are sweeping in on the beach. The twisting vines. So that's something that's all twisty and gnarly, maybe overgrown. Let's have a look. Hit our vulnerable skin. I don't think that goes. Screamed a warning to us. No, twisting vines aren't really screamy, are they? Peeked over the clouds. Now, vines, I don't think are going to be tall enough to creep over the clouds. Plus, twisting and peeked don't really go together, do they? Suffocated the crumbling house. What do you think? The twisting vines suffocated the crumbling house. That's lovely, isn't it? And can you see how twisted, gnarly, overgrown gives that impression? I can see a really old house that's a bit dilapidated, it's a bit broken, and it's got overgrown vines all in the garden, which are suffocating the house. They're wrapping themselves around the house. So I think that's a really good match. Okay, next one. The sun's fierce beams hit our vulnerable skin. Not sure about that. Screamed a warning to us. Peeked over the clouds. Now, if you're not sure, good thing to do is to move on and like process of elimination. Let's go to the ones that we do know and then we'll work out what we've got left. So fire alarm, there's one definitely that I think there matches with the fire alarm. What do you think it is? If it's a fire alarm, it's going to be really loud. It's trying to warn you. The fire alarm screamed. So an alarm can't actually scream like a person can. That's something that only a person could do. But it was so loud and noisy, it's like a scream, okay? Right, so now we've got the sun's fierce beams hit our vulnerable skin or peaked above the clouds, and we've got the moon. Now, the way we're going to figure this one out is by looking at the adjectives. The sun's fierce beams. So that word fierce gives us a clue. Is it just gentle and calm, or is it quite attacking, quite violent, quite something that's a bit more negative? So let's have a look. We've got the words hit as a verb, and the word peaked as a verb. Which one do you think goes better with fierce? The sun's fierce beams. Have you got it? Have you guessed it? Let's get my arrow. It's hit our vulnerable skin. Fierce beams hit our vulnerable skin. Those two go together, fierce and hit. They're both quite sort of violent words to use. They go together, which means that we are left with the moon peaked over the clouds. Now, the moon can't really peak like an animal or a person could, but it's a really good description of giving you an idea about how slowly it just stuck out a little bit from behind the clouds, yeah? So can you see how personification can be used to really add depth and detail to your description? It really makes it more interesting for the reader, but really helps create a picture in the mind of the person who's reading your work. Okay, so we need to be good at verbs here. We talked about verbs before, didn't we? Here, hit, screamed, stroked, peaked, suffocated. Having the right choice of verb is crucial to writing good personification. So here I've got a verb mat. I have sent this to you as well, so you can either look at it on the screen while you're doing your work later, or you could print it out if you wanted a paper copy. Okay, so here is a verb mat, verbs for movement, voice, objects, emotions, senses, and thought. And then there's a few more useful verbs at the bottom. So what we want are ambitious, wow words that are chosen specifically for an effect, okay? So going back to our Tadeo Jones video, we looked at this picture last week. Do you remember this picture you had from the sheet that you were using personification and similes on? Okay. Well, today I'm going to take you step by step on how to write personification. So we're going to use this picture as a stimulus. Now, the thing we're going to be writing about are the shadows in that tunnel. So it's quite dark, shadowy tunnel, isn't it? So we've got our picture. We're describing the shadows using personification. Step 1, think of verbs that you could use to describe how the shadows might move. So shadows look like they're moving sometimes, don't they? But they don't actually move on their own. So let's think about some verbs we could use to describe their movement. Now, have a think. Any ideas? Let's go back to our verb mat. There's loads of movement verbs here. Can we think of some verbs that might be applicable or appropriate for shadows? So bouncing, not sure, that seems a bit too busy. In my head, the shadows here would be quite slow and a little bit creepy and scary. So I don't want any verbs that are too jolly or happy. So have a look at your verbs. Here, can you think of some? Okay, have you got some ideas of verbs we could use? Do you want to see what I came up with? So I have thought of, ta-da, Here's some I prepared earlier. Verbs to describe the shadows. Creep, crawl, leap, dance, chase, or follow. Those are the verbs that I came up with. Let's have a look at our shadow picture. What do you think? Do you agree with what I've come up with? Creep, crawl, leap, dance, chase, or follow. Some are better than others. I absolutely agree. But step one is to come up with a list. If you have a choice of verbs, you can pick the one that you think is most appropriate. Okay, so now we've got our verbs. Time to move on to step two. Step two, we're going to try and put those verbs into a sentence. Okay, so I'm talking about the shadows. So here's my first example. I'm going to take the word creep. Okay, creep is present tense, but I want to turn it into past tense for my writing. So I've got the shadows crept. So my noun is my shadows. Crept. Creep is the past tense of creep. That's my verb. And then I'm going to think, where are they creeping? Well, if I look at the picture, they're creeping along the wall. The shadows are along the wall. So the shadows crept along the walls is my personification sentence. Shadows can't actually creep, but I'm giving it a human quality that gives you an idea about how it might move. Okay, so I've put that noun and that verb together. Now, my next example is a little bit more advanced. Following me, the shadows danced along the tunnel. So the verb I've picked here from my list is dance. Again, I've turned it into the past tense because my writing was in the past tense. And I've also got follow. So I've put two together there. You can see my verbs are in red there. So I've got following me, then my noun, my shadows, danced along the tunnel. And that gives you an idea that if you were walking through that tunnel, you might see the shadows moving behind you as you go. That makes it feel a little bit creepier, doesn't it? But it also gives you that sensation, that feeling of moving through the tunnel. Okay, that idea of movement. So that works quite nicely. So we've got step one, verbs. Step two, put them in a sentence with your noun. And step three is more of a challenge and it's optional, okay? Step three, you can add an adverb in there. Ooh. What do adverbs do? Any ideas? They describe a verb. We're going to talk about adverbs a little bit more in our next lesson. But here we're going to use an adverb as a challenge to really upscale my sentence and make it wow. So I've got the shadows, that's my noun, the thing I'm describing. I've got my two verbs, followed and chased me. Okay, I've added two there just to make it a bit more interesting. And that makes it a bit more of a sort of expanded phrase. The shadows followed and chased me menacingly. Ooh, now that adverb, it adds something, doesn't it? It gives you a little bit more of a sense of this could be a bit dangerous. Menacing is a bit mean, a bit dangerous. Gives you that sense that it's a little bit dangerous. These shadows are actually not nice. The person who's being followed and chased by these shadows is not happy about that. So that adverb just adds another level of depth to your writing, which is fantastic. So that's your challenge, is to try that, okay? So here's your task for today. You have got this set of pictures, which should be familiar to you because you looked at them last week. You are going to use the pictures here to try and write some examples of personification. You have to give each object a human quality. Okay, top tip. Think of a verb that you could use to describe your object. That was step one, wasn't it? You could describe the movement or the feelings or the noise and then put it into a sentence with your noun, with your object, okay? Challenge. Try to include some adverbs into some of your sentences if you think you're up to it, okay? So that is your task for today. I can't wait to see what you come up with. And then you have a look at, once you've written your personification, have a look back at your similes and metaphors that you wrote and see if you can kind of think, which one do you prefer? Which one do you think is more powerful? Is there a time when you think you might use one more than the other? Evaluate them, see what you think. Right, good luck.